Good morning. I want to thank you for watching this morning. I want to thank you for giving me another opportunity to share Jesus with you this morning. We've been looking into the life of Jesus over the last several weeks, and I hope to go all the way through as far as the Lord allows me to go. And I appreciate your support and your words of encouragement. And I just, again, every day that we come on here, I just want to start the day out with thanking God. I mean, it's a beautiful day outside. You can hear the birds singing. It's just a great day. And I pray that you will have a great day as well. I pray that this lesson today will help you and give you words of encouragement and just excite you the way it excites me to be able to share Jesus. You know, some of these stories that we go, the events that we go through in this Bible study or this devotion, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's so much that we can gain from it that sometimes we just read over things really quick and we miss maybe some really simple things, and sometimes we miss some deeper meaning. And excuse me. Today, we're going to be looking at when Jesus turned the water into wine. It's a story that if you've ever been to church or read about Jesus, you know that's his first miracle, a public miracle, I should say, that is recorded. And a lot of times we just read over it as just a simple place, but in my mind, I'll just be honest with you, in my mind, I read it as well, he only done it because his mom asked him to. But when I got down into it and I started reading, there's a lot more into it than just this is a miracle that Jesus did just because his mom told him to. And we're going to look at it today. And it's John. It's the only place that I could find it is John chapter 2. John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. And the third day, there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. So I'll probably have to go back and look at the calling of his disciples when we get into this after this lesson. I just really wanted to get to this today because I enjoyed it so much as reading. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto them, They have no wine. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. And his mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he shall say unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 fireskins apiece. Jesus saith unto them, Fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he saith unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bare it. And when the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and he knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, Every man that beginneth doeth set forth the good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, but thou which hast kept the good wine until now. This beginning of the miracles did Jesus in the Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Now, again, like I said, I'll have to go back and pick up the calling of the disciples, but I guess I got ahead of myself because of this turning water into wine as I started studying it, and there was something that jumped out at me. It's just those 6 water pots. You know, as we'll get into that in just a minute, but it kept nagging at me. I kept looking into why 6, why this, and it kept, it says the manner of purifying of the Jews, and that just kept sticking out to me. And I'm gonna share with you in just a minute, but I want to go back up and look, and Jesus here, he was at a marriage ceremony, and his mom let him know that there was no more wine. And he asked Jesus to do something. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. And his mother said unto his servants, Whatsoever saith you, whatever he saith unto you, do it. Now, we've talked about earlier, is we saw that I mentioned a couple of days ago that Jesus was subject to a higher authority. You know, when he was, we saw that Jesus was in the temple teaching, and his parents came and found him, and you know, he was being about his father's business, but yet after he had found them, even though he was doing what he thought was right as a young boy, he was subject to his parents. He listened to his parents, and if you're listening to me today and you're a child and you might be hearing this in the background and this gets your attention, I just want you to know that this is the example that Jesus set for us. That he, even as a child, he was subject. That means he listened and obeyed his parents. And here again, he's an older man now. He's fixing to start into his ministry. He's been baptized. He's went into the wilderness for 40 days, and now he's fixing to start his ministry, and he's doing it again. He's listening to his mother. He's not going against her will, even though he's like, my time's not yet. And sometimes we don't always, as young men and women, you know, we don't always see the bigger picture. Our parents sometimes have to guide us in the right direction. It's important for us to listen to that and to follow their instructions if it's being led of God. And we see Jesus giving us another example of following his mother. Now, as I started looking, his mother gives us some good instructions. Mary gives the servants here some good instructions. And he says, whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And that's what I'm telling you today, is if Jesus has given you instructions, Mary, it's do it. Just do it. Don't think about it. Don't over complicate it and try to figure it out in your head. Just do it. And because I promise you, when you do it, the outcome is going to be so much greater than what you thought it could be. You know, we got this limited carnal imagination in our mind of what this world can do. We've got a limited understanding of the whole picture, and we put limitations on God. Well, you know, if I do this or if I do that, you know, this is going to be the outcome. But when we trust in the Lord and he tells us to do something, and we do it to the best of our ability, he's gonna take it, and we might not see the outcome right then, but eventually in the future, or maybe we'll get to heaven, whatever, I don't know, but it'll work out. It always does. If Jesus tells you to do something, it always works out. Now, we're going to get to the 6 water pots. Now, there's these 6 water pots, and it says, after the manner of purifying of the Jews. Now, I got to thinking about those water pots, and it says here that they were made out of stone, and also that they were different sizes, because it says containing 2 or 3 foreskins apiece. Now that means they're different sizes. They're not all alike. So I want to point that out real quick, and also that the 2 to 3 foreskin is about 20 to 30 gallons. So I want you to think about this. Now, I didn't know this stuff. Started looking it up. It just kept nagging at me to study into these pots a little bit. Now we got to think about that. There's 6 of these pots there, that if you add them all together, somewhere around 150, give or take a few gallons, 150 gallons of wine or of water at this point. So they take these pots, and the pots are for purifying. Now, I may not get this exactly right, but this was just what I gathered, and what the Lord had kind of led my heart to understand is these were for purifying. So whatever that you were purifying, you would completely submerge it. You would dunk it. So if I'm just, they're in a kitchen here. They got 6 water pots, and it's for the manner of purifying of the Jews. Now it's for either washing hands or washing dishes. Now what I could see them doing is taking the dishes or the cups and putting them in these stone pots and then filling them up with water and completely submerging them, or they took them and they just kept dunking them and so the first pot would be the dirtiest, and your second pot would continue dirty till the end of it was a little bit cleaner as you completely submerge the cup or the dish or whatever it was they were cleaning. Now, and that was just my understanding. I may be totally wrong, but I don't. As the things that I read about, the things that I studied on, this is just kind of what I kind of gathered from that information. And I said, as the Lord was kind of leading me in this direction. And so you think about these water pots. These water pots were made out of stone. They were used for purifying. So the water that was inside these pots were dirty. It's very important. This is one of the things I got excited about. This water was dirty. So we got 6 pots here that are filled with, that have been at one point filled with dirty water. So these pots, you wouldn't put good wine in these 6 pots. That wouldn't, that wouldn't, you would not have done that. These were for purifying. These were for cleaning. These were not for good wine. So the servants there, they went and they filled these 6 pots up with water. They filled it all the way to the brim, completely full. There was no more room for water. It was completely full. And then Jesus turned it into the wine. And as the governor says, it was the best wine he had ever had. They saved the best wine for last. Now, the number 6 kept sticking in my mind. What is this? What is this 6? Why 6 pots? Why not 7 pots? 7 could be more easily explained. 7, there's a lot of times 7 is used in the Bible. But what the Lord showed me, and through my studies, is I caught on to something that there were 6 days of creation. And what happened after Adam and Eve took of that fruit? Their eyes were open and sin entered into the world. When God created the world, it was made perfect. There was no sin in the world yet. There was no sin affecting the world. Sin was here because Satan was already here, but there was no sin affecting the world yet. And so the world would have been clean. But then when Adam and Eve took of that fruit and their eyes were open and sin entered in the world and started to affect the world in the way that it still is doing today, it became dirty. It became tainted. So as I started thinking about these 6 pots that would have had dirty dishwater in it, and I started thinking about creation and how that God had created this world in 6 days, and it was full of sin now. So, and then, we have the hindsight of being able to turn to chapter 20 or chapter 21 in the Bible. Well, the disciples didn't have that. The disciples were there. They were in the moment. They were seeing these things right before them. They might not have grasped the whole picture. But you think about this. What was Jesus' purpose? This is a perfect picture of Jesus. He took something that was dirty, the water pots that they used to clean dishes with, they washed their hands with. It was dirty dishwater in these pots beforehand, and Jesus took it. He filled it up to the brim, completely full, and he cleansed it and made it into wine, the best wine that they had had at this party. How sweet is that? That Jesus, and we can go back and see that, and when the Last Supper, what Jesus said that wine represented, that was his blood. So Jesus took this water in these pots that were used for dirty dishwater, or washing their hands. It was dirty, tainted water that was used for the representation of purifying. But water and the law, it's insufficient. Just like baptism and water is insufficient. That's not what's going to save you. It's that blood that was shed, that representation of the wine that was in these pots. That's what's important. It was the most pure, it was the best wine that they had ever tasted. And that's what Jesus turned this dirty dishwater into, was this wine, the best that they had tasted. And as we look at and later on with the Last Supper, and Jesus said this wine that he blessed and he passed around his disciples, it represented his blood. And what's going to purify sin from this world? The 6 pots that were representing the 6 days of creation that was full of sin now because of what Adam and Eve did, that first Adam. Here comes the second Adam to live a perfect, pure life. He's going to cleanse it out, and it's going to be better than it's ever been before. You think you've lived a good life. You think you've enjoyed life with love and peace and joy, and you don't know Jesus. You ain't experienced any of those things to the full extent of what Jesus wants you to experience. You think you've had a good life? Well, let me tell you, you meet Jesus, he purifies you completely, and that's why all these things are so important. When we go into the Gospels, we go into reading about the stories of the events of Jesus' life. It's so important to see all these things. He filled it completely to the brim. Jesus changes your life. He changes it completely. All of it. Different sizes. These pots weren't all the same size. They were different sizes. But he changed them. There's different people, different types, different things. But Jesus, when he changes you, he changes you completely, and your life will be better than it's ever been before. You think you've experienced good things, and you ain't got Jesus. You ain't experienced good things yet. You get a hold of Jesus and let him change you. Let him purify you with that blood, that pure wine that we drink when we do communion, as we represent his blood. And that's what's going to take away the sins of this world. That's what Jesus. That's what how he was introduced to the world whenever he came to John, is he was this, behold, the Lamb of God, which take away the sins of the world. And that's what, you know, when I see this, there's so much more into these little stories. These just, you know, a simple miracle of turning water into wine. But when you get down into it, there's so much more. You know, I don't want to take away from any of the meaning, but these are just the things that the Lord has shown me. And when I read it, I'm just like, wow, God, you know, it's amazing to think that all these things are in there that I've overlooked for all these years, and I hope and continue as we go into these studies, and we're going to look at most likely the calling of his disciples. I kind of overskipped a little bit of that. His disciples were here with his mother Mary, but I just wanted to bring this out today on this Friday morning, and this beautiful day that we've got. It just excited me to see these little things in the scriptures and how that God puts these things in here that we just overread sometimes. The 6 pots of water that were in the manner of the purifying of the Jews. You know, we think of little pots, right? You know, when I started reading this and seeing what he was talking about, 150 gallons. 150 gallons of water he turned into the most pure wine. And he did it completely. These pots were filled all the way up to the brim. So you think about this and get a concept of it. A 50-gallon drum. You think how big of a 50-gallon drum is? He had 3 of them. And it was completely full. But I appreciate you listening to me today. I want to thank the Lord again for just a beautiful day. I want to thank the Lord for another, him blessing me with another blessing here of reading about his son, Jesus. I want to thank, I can't thank him enough. I just want to thank God for everything, because, you know, that's what the Bible tells us to do, to give thanks in everything. Today, as we go about our daily business, we just be mindful to give him thanks and praise. And as we go in, I don't know if I'll be able to do a lesson tomorrow, but I will be doing lessons next week. I may record one later today and put it on in the morning. But, you know, these lessons is just, I'm just thankful that God is such a merciful and gracious God. And if you haven't experienced Jesus, you haven't experienced life. You may think you've had the best, but just as these men here at the marriage supper did, they thought they had tasted the best wine at the beginning, but you ain't tasted the best until you've tasted a little bit of Jesus. I hope you have a great day, and God bless.